Hello, can you see and hear us? Hello, welcome. Can you hear us?
I think it's good from your side. Hello.
Veronica,
Yeah.
microphone?
Yeah.
Because this is the microphone we have.
You can
So
hear us?
Yes, yeah.
use the microphone.
Yeah. Yeah, for the session. Okay, thank you.
Hi, okay, it's working well here. You can hear us and we can start, right?
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Do you want to, because I know that you sent us the slides in advance, but would you like to share them yourself so that you can click when you're switching your slides? You are the second person to present. So we will have another panelist first, and then it's you, and then we have another presentation.
Okay, so I just share.
Yeah, this works, but for now you can just not share your screen, and then
Yeah.
in a bit. Okay?
Yes, okay.
I will stop the video here, but you should be able to see us via another
Yeah.
so for the online experience there.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are 6 minutes late. Everything's working. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yes. I'd like them to thank you, our students, for being here. My dear colleague, also to share this session with us, to see friendly. I also see Dr. Watt who is coming to the room, so welcome everyone. I would like also to welcome our panelists that are here and ready for you today. Guillermo Moyo-Barber, Nguyen Dong, and Dr. Amalia Muller, who will then be discussing the topic of today, which is procedural rights and climate change in Southeast Asia. It's a great pleasure for me here to be able to moderate this panel. When Dr. Barber was planning the panels, I was really glad that I could share my thoughts in a topic that has and is close to my heart, a topic that I have dealt with in my PhD with climate change and Aarhus Convention, and that at the time that I started my PhD, the regional developments were just actually that is starting. Of course, we had the Aarhus Convention, but the developments in Latin America, and now what we see Southeast Asia are then not assuming. So I'm really glad that I can actually learn and then further discussion. And I hope that this will then enlighten also our students in prospect of research that we can have also the context of research projects in the university and also outside. So thank you very much already for your contribution. Climate change is an issue that of course needs, and we are dealing with a global response. Why we do this global response, the question that is pressing is how we involve the public in general, and that is exactly what we do, what we need to do, and what we are going to discuss today. Without any further ado, I will then of course give the floor to our first panelist, then Guillermo Moyo-Barber, who then Green, and is going to talk to us today about procedural rights in climate change for Southeast Asia. Please, you have around 15 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. First of all, the organizers, panelists, and everyone who are attending this conference here from home too, I would like to start my introduction by expressing my gratitude for being here today and being able to talk about this important and at the same time present issue, which is climate change and procedural rights in civilization. As we already know, climate change is a global issue that affects all of us. However, Southeast Asian region is one of the main regions most vulnerable to these effects. The Asian State of Climate Change Report of 2021 states that Southeast Asia is one of the regions most at risk from the effects of climate change. And the sixth assessment report of the IPCC 2023 says that the increasing of the surface air temperature is leading to the climate events such as heat waves and floodings. They are happening with more frequency, and also they are having severe effects not only on the economy of Asian member states, who are strongly dependent on sectors such as agriculture or food, but also to ecosystems and the lives of animals, flora, and everything that is inside this region. Despite these facts, these states, the states of Asia, are formally committed with the three main climate change treaties. Those are the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, the Kyoto Protocol of 1997, and Paris Agreement of 2015. Thus, they are committed with the objectives of these treaties. Those are basically reducing emissions and limiting global temperature to 1.5 Celsius degrees. This commitment can be developed by, for example, legislation. The Asian member states can enact their own national plans, for example, for reducing emissions to protect the environment, or by providing the nationally determined contributions to the Conference of Parties, the COP, and the UNFCCC, which states the objectives, the own objectives of reduction. For example, Cambodia can say, okay, I'm going to reduce my CO2 levels in 20% to 2030. They can change these objectives, they do, and this is a way of keeping how the Conference of Parties can monitor the commitments of Asian states. It is important also to highlight the role of youth and children in Southeast Asia. Laura García Martín, who is a Spanish researcher, notes that more than a quarter of the plaintiffs in strategic climate litigation cases are under the age of 18 or between the ages of 18 and 25. According to Asia, the youth population comprises 1/3 of Asia's total population. Then we can assume the national legislation in Southeast Asia should enable children and youth to go to the courts and enforce their rights, because this could be a major step forward in combating climate change. So this is the context of climate change in Southeast Asia. And one of the main initiatives to protect the environment and to fight against this phenomenon has been the negotiation of the Asian Declaration on Environmental Rights. This is a non-binding document that states, that recognizes three main procedural rights. Those are the right of access to environmental information, the right to participate in environmental decision making, and the right access justice in the environmental field. As we know, in law we can distinguish between substantive rights, such as the right to health, the right to a healthy environment, for example, and also procedural rights. Procedural rights enable us, the citizens, to protect those substantive rights. So, in this context, we are going to talk about these three rights, and there's a fourth one. The Declaration also recognizes the right to promote and defend the environment, which is also a major step forward, but we are only to focus on the three rights. These rights, we have to note that are not something new in the environmental field. Those are also recognized in international instruments, regional instruments, more exactly, such as the Aarhus Convention in Europe or the Escazú Agreement in the Latin America region. So, first of all, we have the right to access environmental information. This right entails, as we can see, the right to access, seek, receive, impart environmental information and request it from public authorities. Among other things, this right shall be accessible and affordable. We will talk later about what means affordable. Secondly, the right to participate in environmental decision making should be safe, meaningful, effective, and this is important at the earliest possible stage before decisions are taken or, for example, activities are implemented. One important aspect of this right is the standard of the free, prior, and informed consent for activities likely to impact the ethnic communities. We are also going to talk about this. And finally, we have the right to access justice, which entails the right to an affordable, effective, and enforceable remedy to be determined by a court or a competent authority. Here we will focus on strategic climate litigation in Southeast Asia as a crucial element of this right. So, first of all, we're going to talk about affordability. So, the declaration says that access to information, but also access to justice, shall be affordable. So, can anyone here tell me what means affordable? Because I mean, it depends on the case. I mean, if I have €1 and I go to the public authority and say, hey, I want to get some information about, for example, environmental impact assessment, they will say maybe, okay, yeah, €1. Or maybe they will say, no, it's €5, and you have to take out your wallet with a sad face in your expression and say, okay, I give you €5. But then another public authority maybe say, sorry, it's €20. Oh, I don't have the money, sorry. Another person can come in and say, oh, I have the money, it's affordable to me. They do have the money. So this is a concept that has to be determined somehow, and it depends obviously on the case. Thus, how can we find a solution to this? Well, following the example of the Aarhus Convention and the Escazú Agreement, both come with implementation guides and also a compliance committee. The guides give a general interpretation and a more complete definition of this standard of what affordable means. And the committee and the compliance committee can examine the complaints issued by us, the citizens, regarding whether it is or not a violation of the treaty. The committee can say, okay, in this case, €10 is affordable, okay, €5 is not affordable because it depends on the context and on the possibilities of the person. So, having a regional, also I have to highlight that here in Europe, where we have the Aarhus Convention, we have the Court of Justice of the European Union, which also gives an extra hand in this matter. So, in this aspect, it's important to know that having a regional court or an authority or an institution capable of giving a common interpretation of the standards like this, among others, is a very important issue and we should be taking into account when debating about the drafting of the Asian Declaration on Environmental Rights. Secondly, we are going to talk about the free, prior, and informed consent, which can be seen as a standard, a principle, a right. People can call it in many ways, scholars name it in many ways. We are going to talk about this as a standard. The free prior and informed consent is an obligation that is recognized in this declaration, and public authorities will have to obtain this consent from ethnic communities in every activity likely to impact them. Now, this is a standard that has been shifted a little bit because the approach in this region has been to introduce this standard to ethnic communities, but it is traditionally linked to the Latin America region, and there we are more used to talk about indigenous people or indigenous communities than ethnic communities. It is estimated that in Asia there are 2/3 of the 3 million people who identify themselves as indigenous. In Southeast Asia, this figure can be as high as 100 million. Despite these figures and the fact that the all Asian states parties have ratified the 2007 Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, only a few states in this region recognize indigenous people. So that can be why there's been a shift in the language, that we are not talking here about indigenous people but ethnic communities. This particular shift has enabled Asia to establish this standard, which should be seen as a major step forward. One, because it should enable local communities to participate in decisions regarding development activities that may have an environment but also a climate impact, and they become to national judicial bodies to seek a fair trial. This is something that how local communities can be a subject of change in environmental protection or change. It's been an issue that has also been discussed during the current COP29, but also in the COP16 that was celebrated in Cali, in Colombia, I think a week ago, in this month. So, being able to take into account how local people, with their own techniques, with their own knowledge, can help to fight climate change is a really, really interesting issue, and it has to be taken into account when drafting this regulation. Finally, we are going to talk about the strategic land litigation in Southeast Asia, right topic, I have to say, which is a crucial element of the right to access justice in the environmental field. But what means, again, strategic land litigation? Well, land litigation refers to those cases brought to national or supranational courts that involve companies and also state action on its climate policy and international change commitments. The term strategic is used to emphasize that the goal is not only to change the behavior of the state or the company, but also to raise awareness and that this issue should be addressed. Most of the cases of the strategic land litigation are not victories. Only a few of them end up in a victory of the plaintiffs. So the main goal is that the court is able to hear about what's happening, about how companies, how states are violating or not treaties, how are they or not reducing their emissions. So in Southeast Asia, climate litigation is not established in Europe or Latin America. And one of the main reasons can be the absence of a regional court capable of collect the complaints of citizens that cannot find a solution in their own national jurisdiction. However, there are several cases that have already been brought before national jurisdictions in Southeast Asia, such as we can see here the Thailand, Indonesia, or the Philippines. And I will briefly tell about the cable majors litigation in the Philippines. In 2015, the NGO Greenpeace, with other organizations and citizens, filed a request to the Human Rights Commission of the Philippines to open investigations into some of the world's largest greenhouse gases and fuel companies in the world, such as BP, Chevron, Shell, Repsol. They are so-called cable majors. This group of dozens of state-owned companies climate change interferes with the enjoyment of fundamental rights, such as the right to life or the right to physical and mental health, and requested the Commission to investigate the responsibility of these companies in relation to the human rights impacts of climate change. What did find the Commission? Well, Commission policy results on 6 May 2022, confirming 3 things. It confirmed that these companies were aware of the impacts of their products on the climate system and environmental protection. Second, that they had engaged in intentional obfuscation and obstruction to avoid meaningful climate action. And third, that they are responsible for carrying out human rights due diligence and providing remedy for harms committed. So this is how strategic climate mitigation works, and this is a case that ended up in a victory. So, in conclusion, the Asian Declaration is a fundamental step in Asia's democratization process, ensuring procedural rights of information, participation, and justice, just how we have observed, makes national policies more democratic and effective with knowledge of local people, which also helps to protect other related human rights, such as the right of the child or the right of indigenous people, for example. The approach used by Asia reflects aspects used in both the Aarhus and the Escazú agreement, with clear differences such as the free, prior, and informed consent in activities like municipality communities. The inclusion of the right to promote and defend the environment, it should be seen also as a major step forward, especially encouraging younger generations to take the lead. However, this project is a project, and it has to be improved. That's first of all. And once this has happened, the journey has just begun. The drafting of, for example, an implementation guide, the creation of a mechanism for monitoring the compliance of the state parties are crucial elements to how can I say, so that this declaration can be can have tangible and positive results. So thank you very much, and I'm free to question. I don't know if the round of questions is now or maybe.
We can open for questions, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all. I think we need to speak microphone, right? Because of.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Elaine, for the clear overview on not only one but the 3 pillars of access to information, public access and access to justice, which is a very challenging task, I would say. I do have a lot of questions actually in my mind, but I would like to first open to the public. Any questions from the audience? Yes. So.
I think it's enough. If
It's
you
a
just
great, yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm very enjoyed with your presentation, and I have a curiosity about the strategic climate mitigation. Do you mean that with the strategic climate mitigations, in difference with the non-strategic climate mitigation, is about the mentioning of climate mitigation as a central climate change as the central issue in this mitigation? Because in Southeast Asia country, I don't know what maybe the case in Thailand and Philippines, but in Indonesia itself, in my country, there is no strategic climate mitigation. I mean that which against the government by mentioning climate change as the central issue. But I don't know with the 2 other cases, in those cases, climate change put as the central issue or not, because you mean as a strategic climate mitigation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the question. Well, the term of the strategic climate mitigation is an abstract concept. It's not a close one. The cases of the litigation that can be inside this concept can be many, but one common element is that climate change appears. Maybe it's not the central issue. It can be not the central issue, but it's one of the, how can I say, ramifications of the litigation. For example, I think in the Indonesian case, it was a litigation against the government for activities such as deforestation or And in the case of Thailand, the climate element, I think it was not the central one. The central element in the Thailand case was that the Ongoi people in Thailand, they were affected by a development activity issued by the government of Thailand, or the regional government. And the government didn't do the environmental impact assessment correctly. So they said, hey, you didn't do this correctly, you cannot proceed with the activity. Because for example, we didn't participate in the consulting process of the assessment. That's the central issue, but they say that also this development activity was likely to have climate impacts. So, this a normal case there where the rights of the people are affected and the Ongoi people are affected, it can be used also to criticize the development activities that may have climate impacts. So you can protect two things in one litigation, and I can explain myself. So the strategic climate litigation is a broad concept. You can have a lot of litigations there. There will be people that will say this is not strategic climate litigation, or people will say yes. So for me, for example, the main reason is that there is a climate element, and you want to protect in some way that the climate system.
So you mean that air pollution litigation is also included as a climate change litigation?
For example, air pollution could be seen as an issue of health, of human health, but also if the pollution we are talking about CO2, emissions of CO2 or other greenhouse emissions, you could say, hey, it's an issue of health, of my health, but also it's an issue of climate change. So you can, tackle these things in both ways. So maybe it's not always the case, but it's starting to be the common trend also in Europe here before the European Court of Human Rights too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a question regarding, I guess, one of the perennial challenges surrounding climate change, which is that states are often very apprehensive of tying themselves to binding legislation, binding treaties. And so in Southeast Asia, with the ASEAN Declaration, its non-binding nature, how do you see the enforcement in that region? And maybe in your research, if you found any non-binding legislation that you feel has actually had a significant impact?
Thank you. Well, in Southeast Asia, it happens that we have to compare it for one moment with the case of Europe. We have the Arms Convention, but in Europe, for example, we have the European Union, which is not only a cooperation organization. We give competence to Europe. The European Union is also a party of the Arms Convention. So the obligations with the Arms Convention, also with the Compliance Committee, with the guidelines, are very strong. Here we only have a draft declaration. Then in the Asian is more a cooperation organization. Also, the principle of non-intervention and sovereignty is very present. Is quite present in the Southeast Asia region, which can be seen as an obstacle for implementing this declaration. So it will be difficult with these principles governing this region differently from, for example, Europe, to implement this declaration. However, it's up to the states to approve this declaration, to manage how to implement it through legislation. And those are the principal obstacles, of course. And as I said, this declaration cannot work alone. It needs something, authority, an institution, guidelines, something to interpret the law, to make it homogeneous in every state. So this is a debate that can be broader, because we can also talk about the regional co-mediation in this regard.
question. As you mentioned, there are different obstacles to the implementation of these, for example, the declaration, etc. But are there also discussions about a binding document, or is it already like in progress, or do you see in the future that there might be one at some point?
In the Asian context, I don't have any knowledge about the binding document drafting. I don't know if they would say something about this. I don't know. I don't know. In the Asian region, I'd say difficult, but not, I mean, impossible. But yeah, as I said, I don't know. It can be done. So maybe we'll say something about this. Sorry.
One last question here. And then
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to ask if one day the acceleration of the climate change will actually name the greatest perpetrators, and we know that certain states could be on that list according to our current knowledge, with the greatest emission and the tendency not to engage in environmental treaties and such actions, then what do you think had to be done for these states to change their tendencies and actually take responsibility, get to be accountable, how to pressurize them? Is it just with time, or there can be some action to be done?
It's a tough question. I wish
Sorry to get out of the
No,
Southeast
no.
Asian framework.
I wish I had the answer. But, well, I think one of the key elements right now is that younger generations are more aware of the effects of climate change. I can take the lead by actions such as, for example, strategic climate mitigation and making visible, making public what states and also companies are doing, because these things are in the most of the times are secret, or the people don't know very well how are they approaching the climate change. So that's why this is strategic. You have to in some way, then if you don't succeed at the court, you have to try that this makes public and people is aware of what's happening. So that's one of the key elements. I think younger generations are actually quite well in this sense. And then international law has to take a step forward by the binding instruments, not only declarations, but also binding instruments. So those are only the two keys that I can give you right now.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. In view of the time, we are moving to the next presentation. That will be delivered by Vivienne Wong Dung. This is co-authored, but I believe that we have Vivienne today to present. Vivienne is currently holds a position of associate lecturer at the Department of Economics and Finance, Business School at University of Vienna. So I would like to welcome you, if you can hear us well, to share your presentation, and then you have about 15 minutes. Yes, it's working, you can see it.
Sorry, I'm sharing the slide. Can you all see the slide there?
Yes, we can see the slides. You just need to put in presentation mode.
Oh, okay. Is that
Perfect.
right? Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's evening in Vietnam. Very glad to be part of this conference. On behalf of the authors, I'm going to present our paper. So our paper trying to find out the concept of procedural environmental rights in the context of climate change, with a focus on ASEAN and Vietnam regulations. So there will be four main parts in my presentation today. First of all, I would like to introduce a little bit about the background of climate change and the impacts in the South Asian region and in Vietnam in general. And also after that, I'm going to introduce how the law, international law has developed the procedural environmental rights, and also in ASEAN, and how procedural environmental rights have been developed and implemented under Vietnamese law. So as you may know that climate change has become a crisis, a serious security concern to humanity, and it's kind of cost depletion in essential resources like energy, water, and agricultural land for our survival. And the main cause causing global warming, climate change, leading to climate change is the increase of greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel combustion and industrial activities operated by humans. According to IPCC, the main contributor to the increasing greenhouse gas emission is electricity and heat production or energy production, and the rising global temperatures on average because of greenhouse gas concentration leading to the serious impacts on ecosystem and human survival. And South Asia has been hit hardest due to climate change. So the history show that even though South Asia is not the developed region based on the development economies in this region, of all countries in this region, and the region generates a very humble amount of greenhouse gas, less than 7% within the last decade, from 1990 to 2019. However, there's a report show that there's an increase in the emissions because this region, the economies of all nations in this region have been emerging recently. And the carbon dioxide emission in ASEAN per capita is projected to rise by 139% by 2040. And of course, the region facing severe impacts due to climate change, rising temperatures, sea level rise, and extreme weather events. Vietnam, due to its special geographical location, is not an exception. It's not outside the impact of climate change. So the average temperature in Vietnam has experienced a rise. So the temperature has risen 0.2 Celsius degree per decade over the past 14 years, and has been raising faster and faster recently. Raising levels, especially around the Mekong Delta River, located in the south of Vietnam, show an increase as well of 3.6 millimeter per year. And frequent typhoons and flooding have caused widespread destruction. In recent times, just a couple months ago, Vietnam experienced a superstorm Yan, when we suffered billions of dollars of the economy, and also for the recovery, especially in the mountainous area. So this is the diagram photos, the map that I extracted from the IPCC report show that all South Asian countries can see that, like with Vietnam, it's have a high risk index, and in the top 10, including Philippines, in the period from 1999 to 2018. The next project that impacts for Vietnam is that our country is going to experience temperature increase. Depends on the scenario. The worst scenario may be up to like 4.2 Celsius degree, and the north of Vietnam will experience faster warming. Substantial sea level rise is another huge concern for the country. The arable land, this agriculture land in the Mekong Delta will be done and will be like under the effect of salinity. It will be up to like 73 centimeter severe flooding in key areas. And also other acute extreme weather events going to happen. Well, moving to the next slide. So, with the climate change, right, as the emerging crisis, we set out regulations for states, including Vietnam, to take measures in response to climate change. And there's it under international law, and they found that human rights and environmental agreements in the previous time, human rights and environmental agreements are quite separate, right? So you can understand that some core human rights instruments primarily designed to protect individual rights. Because of the time in the forming human rights instruments at that time only focused on before the environmental rights happened at that time. So they were not created to address environmental issues. Environmental agreements, on the other hand, will place a particular emphasis on environmental protection, but they do not specify rights in the same way a human rights treaty. So, as due to climate change, the enjoyment of some human rights, for instance, like the right to life, right to health, food, water, sanitation, are affected. So there is a causal link, intrinsic link between human rights and environmental rights. Now, international law has adopted human rights lens in order to connect, the human rights and environmental rights. So, from the substantive perspective, the right to a healthy environment has been defined. This is a substantive right, but the concept of this right also, not only includes the substantive rights like the right to life, the right to food, the right to sanitary water, but also include procedural environmental rights as well. So the right to health, the right to a healthy environment, or in short, R2HE. So this has been developed in the Stockholm Declaration from the Stockholm Conference in 1972. With the declaration that all individuals in the world have the right to live in an environment that supports dignity and well-being. Over the last 2 decades, human rights law has increasingly integrated environmental concerns, linking the rights like life and health with environmental issues. However, as we may know that this right to a healthy environment has not been recognized universally in the Berlin Treaty. And several states have recognized it within their domestic legal frameworks, or some certain states even have developed this right as a constitutional right in their constitutional law. But however, this right at the universal level is not a general obligation to all the states to ensure. The United Nations General Assembly also recognized this right in the resolution, but it's still non-binding. And the concern or the crux of the matter here is how to implement this right and how to define and implement the right to healthy environment. And from the procedural front, the right to healthy environment, as I say, include procedural environmental rights, which include three key pillars. As first, access to environmental information. Second, public participation in environmental decision making. And last one, access to justice. So these three pillars have been developed from the Earth Summit, from the Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration, and later in line of Principle of the Rio Declaration, the Aarhus Convention was adopted in 1998. Also, as you may know, that the Aarhus Convention is not a global treaty; it's a regional treaty. However, in recent time, Aarhus Convention has shown its influence that it's open for other members and not from the same region could become or could participate in the convention. I would like to move on how the three rights of procedural rights in environmental protection developed under international law. So the access to environmental information, you can find in different articles, provisions in international law instruments and conventions. So access to environmental information, generally understanding this is the right for public, to be engaged in environmental decision making is essential because in order to participate in the environmental governance, the public needs to have the access to information that help them to understand, what's the information about the environmental situation or environmental projects, for example, and in order to monitor and influence action that affect their surrounding environment. And in this right, government have the obligation to collect and distribute environmental data held by the public authorities, and also ensure that the public can easily access this information. So this right facilitates the public participation in environmental governance. Access to information alone, is not enough for effective environmental governance. Active public participation is essential to influence the decision based on the available information that the public obtain from the governmental authorities. So, in public participation, the public can participate, by election or grassroots movements, lobbying, through the lobbying process, public speaking, hearings, etc., in order to have any opportunity to influence the decisions that affect their environment. And one way of public participation, which has been recognized under international law in the public use case, is the environmental assessment process that the public can participate in the assessment of investment projects in order to influence influence the governmental decision making. And the last pillar is access to justice. So the access to justice is means that the state ensure effective access to judicial and administrative proceedings, including mechanisms for redress and remedy of the public. So assume that if environmental information requests are ignored or improperly resolved, or if decisions regarding activities affecting the environment are questioned, individuals must have the right to seek a review in court or by an independent legal body. Great. So now I'm going to present how procedural environmental rights have been developed under ASEAN instruments. So before, I would like to briefly introduce ASEAN. So ASEAN, in short, is the short name of Asian Association, Association of South Asian Countries. This is an association established by South Asian countries to promote cooperation. However, their primary focus is political and economic issues. And current members included in ASEAN 10, except Timor, but other 10 in the region, are in ASEAN. However, in recent times, despite the region's political and economic focus, ASEAN has made substantial efforts in environmental management, and they have some kind of program, in the region, and the senior officials on the environmental forum in order to view and discuss environmental issues in the region. They also have developed legally binding policies for environmental management. However, there are still challenges like transboundary pollution remain. And there, one instrument, ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, that ASEAN members recognize the right to a healthy environment and affirming that everyone, all the citizens in the region, has the right to a safe, clean, and sustainable environment. And along with that, this instrument also recognizes 3 pillars, as I mentioned previously. However, it's really difficult, it's really challenging to implement procedural environmental rights or the right to healthy environment in ASEAN because of some reason. ASEAN is not like European Union. The first focus is just to maintain the stability and economic development. All nations in ASEAN have different political systems and different backgrounds in terms of history and economic, social developments. So it's really difficult to have one-size-fits-all binding instrument for all nations in the region. And of course, then we have the term that we call the ASEAN Way, means that all the instruments constructed or formulated within ASEAN based on the basis of consensus viewing, and all the countries, all the nations have to agree with that in order to adopt or to pass that instrument. And second of all, that ASEAN has recognized in their own charter that they respect state sovereignty of all members and follow the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of others. So because of that, it is really difficult to adopt a binding instrument, a binding treaty no robust institutions, mechanism, or monitoring mechanisms available in the region to ensure the compliance with environmental obligations in the country, in other member countries. So all the implementation depends on how each member implement and based on the voluntary compliance. And in recent times, there's one positive thing that ASEAN members are working on the Declaration on Environmental Rights that integrates human rights and environmental protection, which will be called ASEAN Declaration on Environmental Rights. Even though this instrument is not binding, right, create no legal enforceability towards all the members, but as we say, better than nothing. So we hope that like, in the future, so ASEAN members can think about, that will like, reflect all the principles from the Aarhus Convention that mark a significant step for all the member countries to follow in order to address climate change and environmental degradation in the region. Moving to the last part of the presentation. So as I say, as a member of ASEAN, so Vietnam, because of all the instruments within ASEAN, is not, are not binding. So it depends on how each member country implement the rights within their legal system. So in Vietnam, Vietnam is a dualist legal system. All international law is not automatically a part of the domestic law. So Vietnam, after the government ratify or participate in international treaties, is it necessary for the government to make new law or reform existing regulations in order to make sure that the country comply with rights and obligations in the newly ratified international treaties. Vietnam has actively participated become members of international treaties on human and environmental rights. Regarding the procedural environmental rights, the substantive right, as I presented previously, the right to a healthy environment, Vietnam has constituted this right as a part, as a right in the constitution in 2013. And along with that, procedural environmental rights are found in the constitution as well. First, the right to access information. This is also a constitutional right, and in the two, in some law that, let's say, the law on environmental protection, 2020, the law on access to information, ensure that the public or the citizen has the right to access information, and the governmental authorities are obligated to provide environmental data. For example, in Vietnam, governmental authorities publish the information on the air quality on a daily basis. Public participation is also a constitutional right in the Constitution. And in environmental context, the public can participate in environmental governance through the public consultation with the governmental authorities. There are investment projects according to the government regulation under the Law on Environmental Protection 2020 that investors and government will have to have consultation with the public in order to provide information for them, and also have some kind of like form that the public can participate in order to voice their opinion. They can contribute their opinion through electronic platforms, online feedback, public hearings, or in-person meetings with the investor or governmental authorities. And access to justice, that this is also a constitutional right, and this right that means that ensure that the citizens have the right to file complaints, take legal actions, receive a fair trial for violation of their rights. And there are regulations, statutory documents regulating this, like the Vietnam Civil Procedural Code, Criminal Procedural Code, Administrative Procedural Code, etc. From what I presented, I think that the Vietnamese government have formulated and constitutionalized all the rights, three main pillars equal in their Aarhus Convention in the legal text of all the legal documents. However, the formulation is not a problem, but the enforcement of those rights in Vietnam in practice is challenging, and there are challenges in the implementation of procedural environmental rights in Vietnam. Environmental protection law in Vietnam, right, to show some kind of strong influence that the public participation can be engaged, so they can create their influence and successfully prevent some kind of project. They contributed their opinions in some project. As I have example here, to stop the investor, to stop the to contribute their voice in order to influence the government not to issue the license to those projects that may potentially causing damage to the environment in the locality. However, as I say, the enforcement contains some challenges. There is no unifying system of environmental information. The information is quite hard to find. Even if you go on the website of the Ministry of Environmental Resources in Vietnam, you may find some information, but not all. And sometimes the information is too technical for an ordinary citizen can understand. And sometimes, public consultation is compulsory for some development project. However, it's often comes too late in the process that the public could not participate in the assessment of the project anymore. So it's quite hard for them, to influence project planning on the governmental decision. And there is some kind of concern existing in some local communities that local governments may prioritize or they may put business interests over environmental protection. So that kind of makes people think that it's not worth participating to that or pursuing common hearings that may kind of like create barriers for citizens to implement or to enjoy the procedural environmental rights in order to protect, or to influence their decision, their opinion to their governmental authorities. And they not only go through informal channels like carrying out collective protests or using the media in order to create pressure or burdens on the investor enterprises or boycott their product. For example, in a case happened, I think around 10 years ago, a Taiwanese corporation in Vietnam, they're producing spices, and they released sewage into Hidai River, that's in the south of Vietnam. And people there use the media, they boycott the products. They no longer bought the products of that companies anymore. And then after that, the company had to make compensation. And however, this kind of informal channels, it's caused like public disorder and social unrest, and show that there's still a challenge in order to create a link between or use the relationship between the local communities and local governmental authorities in order to address environmental pollution or violation
just to
of
interrupt.
environmental regulations in the locality. So because of that,
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Can you please proceed to conclude in view of the time? Just
Right.
wrap up the presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
so I think that the challenge is here that is the enforcement and the use of informal channels and the mistrust of public communities need to be addressed in the near future in order to ensure the effective implementation of procedural environmental rights in Vietnam. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this clear and detailed presentation. I really learned a lot, but also reading the paper with the examples, also with the actually barriers for implementation. It's really interesting to see also how this change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I think that is a very good overview of the problems with implementation, which is then, of course, one of the main obstacles for the effectiveness of procedural rights. I would like to open for one question in view of the time, if there is no interesting question from the audience. Yes, here. It's okay? It's close enough.
Yes, of course.
So, given the intrinsic link between human rights and environmental rights, should ASEAN's framework place equal emphasis on substantive rights like a healthy environment and the already discussed procedural rights? Thank you.
Could you hear the question?
I'm sorry, the internet is a little bit intermittent at the representation, so can you repeat or can you type the question? Is that easier for you? Is that okay for you?
Yeah, you want to type that we type it?
Yes.
Yes, so then we do like this, we type the question and then we move then to the next presentation and then you answer then the question together with then after I have introduced the next panelist. Yes?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So, our next panelist, Dr. Amalia Zuren, has a bachelor degree from the University of Trisakti, Jakarta, Master of Law degrees from Queensland University of Technology, Australia, and a Doctor of Philosophy in Law from the University of Malaya, Malaysia. Dr. Zuren currently serves as the head of international affairs at the university level, overseeing the creation of programs for international students and coordinating the students and change initiatives at the University of Trisakti. So welcome, Dr. Zuren, and then the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. I hope everybody's still awake since I'm the last person to present the presentation, and the material that I present actually it's almost similar with those two previous speakers. Probably my presentation here is a bit like a combination of both or a conclusion of both. So first of all, I would like to extend my warm greetings to all esteemed colleagues and experts and also students here at the Hague University of Applied Science, as well as the persons joining us virtually online. So I'm very honored to be here at the Conference on International Law and Southeast Asia. My name is Amalia Zuren, as introduced before. I'm from Universitas Trisakti, Jakarta, Indonesia, and I specialize in international environmental law. And today I will discuss the ASEAN Declaration on Environmental Rights. I will talk about the historical development, a bit about the historical development, its significance in addressing climate change, and also a comparison with the Arts Convention, and highlighting opportunities and challenges for ASEAN. So, next slide please. Okay, why focus on environmental rights in Asia? It's mentioned before by previous speaker that Asian countries faces significant environmental challenges, including the rising temperatures and then floods, severe floods, and also biodiversity loss. So these challenges threatens not only our ecosystem but also our socio-economic stability. So we all know that public participation is a cornerstone of environmental governance, ensuring transparency and also accountability. And we can see here that the roots of such participation can be traced back to the 1972 Stockholm Declaration, as mentioned by the speaker from Vietnam, which laid the foundation of for the modern international environmental law. And for Asian countries, addressing these challenges requires a collaborative and inclusive approach, and also the ASEAN Declaration on Environmental Rights is a step in this direction. So it's very important declaration for us in Asian countries. So next slide please. We are talking, or we see about the climate change again. We know that ASEAN is home of 7 of the 10 most climate vulnerable nations globally. So almost all countries in Asia are very vulnerable and has a direct and indirect impact because of climate change. The direct impact for the environment includes the rising sea levels that threaten coastal cities, while also floods and droughts will disrupt livelihood. And the indirect impacts is that climate-induced migration and resource conflicts are becoming more frequent nowadays. So these challenges demand urgent action Delta is a vital region for food production, is already experiencing environmental problems such as the saltwater intrusion, and also it will, of course, endangering millions of livelihood around the environment. Next slide, please. Okay, we are moving to the ASEAN Declaration on Environmental Rights. Here are some facts and figures. This declaration was initiated in 2022 by the ASEAN Environmental Rights Working Group, and it is the first regional instrument that is integrating human rights with environmental protection in ASEAN. And its purpose is to promote public participation and ensure access to information, justice, focusing on sustainable development. However, it's asked before by one of the participants here that about the status of the non-legally binding. We know that the status of this draft declaration is remains non-legally binding framework, which of course we know that will limit its enforcement. So we can say here that from its conception in 2022 to present, the draft has evolved to emphasize regional collaboration and the inclusion of local communities. And the declaration seeks to address transboundary environmental issues such as pollution and climate change, and also ensuring regional cooperation. So, my presentation is to compare between the ASEAN Declaration and the Aarhus Convention. So, before moving to the comparison, I will speak a bit about the Aarhus Convention. Next, please. Okay. Next. Okay. So, the Aarhus Convention, or officially known as the Convention to Access to Information, Public Participation in Decision Making, and Access to Justice in Environmental Matters, was adopted on 1998 in Aarhus, Denmark, and came into force on 2001. And this groundbreaking international treaty connects environmental protection with human rights by empowering individuals and communities to actively engage in environmental governance. And this convention are built on 3 pillars, which is access to information, public participation in decision making, and access to justice. On access to information, this convention regulates that governments are required to provide public access to environmental information such as air quality, pollution level, and environmental policies without needing a formal request. And this proactive transparency fosters trust and allows citizens to monitor activities that may harm the environment. And on the public participation in decision making, citizens and communities are granted the right to participate in environmental decision-making process, such as the environmental impact assessment. This ensures that policies reflect public concerns and values, and leading to be more equitable and sustainable outcomes. And the access to justice is about individuals and groups can seek legal remedies when their environmental rights are violated. And this includes the ability to challenge government decisions or corporate activities that breach environmental standards. So the Aarhus Convention is a legally binding convention with up to now is 47 parties, primarily from Europe and Central Asia, but this convention is open for global ratification. So it is a proactive governance approach aligned with global goals like SDGs. SDG 16 is a peace, justice, and strong institution, and SDG 13 climate action. So one example that also important here that one notable success of the Aarhus Convention is its role in strengthening public opposition to environmentally harmful projects across Europe. For instance, communities have effectively used the convention to challenge and halt developments that threaten ecosystems, such as large-scale deforestation projects. So this progressive framework serves as a model for integrating procedural rights into environmental governance. While it has gained global recognition, its implementation remains region-specific and highlighting the potential for adaptation in other regions, such as in Southeast Asia. So, from those facts, we can see the comparison between Aarhus Convention and ASEAN Declaration. I compare on three aspects, which is legal binding, transparency, and access to justice. About the legal binding, as I mentioned before, Aarhus is legally binding, which means compelling governments to comply with its provisions, while the ASEAN Declaration is non-binding and relying on voluntary commitments. About the transparency, Aarhus Convention requires proactive dissemination of environmental information, while the ASEAN Declaration emphasizes collaboration that lacks specific mandates for transparency. And on the access to justice, the Aarhus Convention grants explicit rights to appeal through judicial mechanism, while the ASEAN Declaration focuses on supporting local communities in seeking justice. So, why is this important? Why it is important to compare between those two instruments? I believe that the Aarhus Convention serves as a gold standard for integrating procedural rights into the environmental governance. And of course, I believe that ASEAN can draw inspiration from Aarhus to strengthen its framework and ensuring that communities have meaningful roles in decision making. Next slide, please. Okay, we are talking about how to overcome the barriers to implementation. So it's a challenge for ASEAN because despite its potential, ASEAN faces significant challenges, which are first is institutional diversity. It's about varying capacities among member states, hinder uniform implementation, and then limited transparency means that rural communities often lack access to critical environmental information, and also the weak enforcement because the status of the non-binding nature of the declaration, which is, limits its impact. So, engaging the private sector and civil society is also crucial for overcoming these barriers and ensuring the sustainable development. Last page, okay. This is what we should do to strengthen environmental rights in ASEAN. We have to harmonize national laws with ASEAN Declaration, and then we need to build capacity for rural and marginalized communities and leverage technology for greater transparency and actively involve the private sector and civil society, as I mentioned before. Next slide, please. Okay, this is also talking about to pave the way forward. Several things that I proposed following transition the declaration from non-binding to legally binding framework. This is the most important one, and then establish mechanism for regular evaluation and accountability, and also incorporate meaningful consultation with affected community at every decision-making stage. And okay, a call for collaborative action here. Public participation is a cornerstone of effective environmental governance, and ASEAN must strengthen the declaration to address the region's vulnerability, and also as a sure I can see here that together we can build a resilient and sustainable future for Southeast Asia. That's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zurin, for this presentation on the actually the very important and crucial aspects of having the development of procedural rights in the region, especially with the need, I think the call, finishing with the call for collaboration is then an important point, and especially when we ensure there's vulnerabilities in the region. I would like to give the floor then maybe for you again online to answer the question. Did you type the question there? While then you think about the questions to Dr. Susan. So maybe, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, so you have the floor. I think the question was typed now. You can then answer. Can you see the question?
Yes, yes, in the
Perfect.
chat box, right, yeah. I think, the ASEAN framework may consider emphasizing equally the right to healthy environment and procedural environmental rights. When I say that because the right to healthy environment is recently defined by the United Nations General Assembly in the resolution and also in their legal guide. So this right, you can single it out as a substantive right, including the right to life, the right to food, the right to water, etc. However, right, procedural environmental rights are the rights that in order to facilitate the enjoyment of substantive rights. So yes, if you look at the substantive perspective, there are some rights related to environmental, healthy environmental. However, from the procedural front, there are three main rights: access to information, public participation, and access to justice. So they are the three pillars, as I said, facilitate or pave the way for the enjoyment of substantive rights. So I think that they should enjoy the same, position in ASEAN instrument. But the most important here is that, like Dr. Amelia said, we need cooperation at the region, more robust or stronger cooperation in the region. It's not about how ASEAN, legal, put it in the legal text. I would like to mention about how to effectively implement, enforce those rights, even the right to healthy environment in the region. What is this right, actually? And I take an example. Some countries like Vietnam constitute the right to healthy environment. However, we have no specific definition of what is this right means. To be exact, is that should it include substantive rights like the right to life, the right to sanitary water, the right to food, adequate and nutritious food, or it just include the procedural environmental rights? So none of the legal documents in Vietnamese legislation define that clearly. Or other countries, for example, like Malaysia, I have done a research about Malaysian environmental law. So they haven't constitutionalized the right to healthy environment in their constitution. And other European countries, for example, the Republic of Ireland, I know common law countries that the judges are not willing to adopt the rights that they not really don't know how to define this right in the legislation. And it must show some kind of root, to the rights already existing in the Constitution. So the problem is, it's not about how to define in the legal text, technically speaking, Vietnamese law is beautiful and have beautiful text, but the matter is the enforcement, how to enforce and mechanism to ensure the implementation of the rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just a follow-up question. Then you think that international binding commitments would help with then this implementation at national level?
Yes. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, just a follow-up. You just finished about the problem, which is indeed a common problem with implementation is that, well, many times the law on paper, as you said, is already very good, but then the problem is the effectiveness of this law. So implementing, and that is, the question is, do you think that then having international commitments would help with this, overcoming this barriers?
Yes, I think ideally if the global community, the international community, thinks about formulating, adopting a universal global treaty regulating the right to a healthy environment, that would be the best scenario, that's the idealistic scenario. I think that it's really difficult for the global community to pass a treaty like that. And another issue is that, the international law regulates, is unlike domestic municipal law. It's just regulate the relationship between the state, and state are the main actors, right? And going back to very basic, international law lesson, state are the main actors, and they have sovereignty, and except the obligation is based on or is rooted in just conscience norms, hereditary norm, something that compulsory for state to do so. But if state do not participate or ratify a treaty, so that obligation contained in that treaty is not binding on states. So I think that yes, if we have a framework, international framework, it would be great. But it's really difficult to call for state consent to be bound by that instrument.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I agree. Actually, even with the Arms Convention, at the beginning of the negotiation, it was the whole discussion whether to include the right to a health environment. It was watered down, and then we focus on the procedural right, because then in the negotiation could have an agreement on that. And that is, we had an acknowledgement of our right to a healthy environment, but there is no then recognition of the right. And that's how then the text of the convention could actually pass and be adopted. I give back the floor then to the audience. We have 6 minutes left. And then, yes, question here.
Yes, thank you very much. First, I would like to thank you very much for the presentation and for the presence of, on all behalf of the organizers, guests and professors here. And I would like to have a question about, you mentioned that the path to develop procedural rights in Southeast Asia is that to turn soft law into binding instruments. And do you think this is possible considering the correct political environment in the region in the foreseeable future? Or is it something that requires further action before that would actually be realized?
Okay. That's it? Okay. Yes, it's right. Yeah. So, the question is about the possibility to change the status of the soft law into the hard law. So we know that in international environmental law, we recognize two kind of treaties or two kind of treaties as the sources of international law, which are soft law and hard law. So soft law are usually use the terminology of declaration because its names, its must do whatever. And declaration, it's usually more soft, like state shall do blah blah blah. And the possibility to make the soft law into the hard law, I think from the previous experience, there are, if I'm not mistaken, there are an instrument that starting from the declaration, for example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and then they progress into a hard law convention or become a treaty or convention. So it is possible. It is not something that cannot do, but it depends on the willingness of the states if they want to create a more binding instrument, and they think it is very crucial or matters to the states. It is possible to make a progress between the soft law into hard law, because we have there are some experience before.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have another question for Dr. Sula. So it might be a somewhat similar question, but as someone who's not from that area, how can we understand the willingness of these states to work together, or also are there any pioneers in that case to push forward a more sustainable or more better climate change regulation?
Okay. Sorry. Can you repeat the last one?
Or are there any pioneers, especially in ASEAN, who are pushing forward a stricter regulation concerning climate change?
Okay. Okay. A stricter regulation on climate change, basically.
And also the willingness of these states to work together. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. If you're talking about what happened in ASEAN countries, I think there are some proof that ASEAN countries are collaborating in several environmental issues, such as the haze crisis collaboration in Southeast Asia. It is the example that we can see here, that because they have regional collaboration, including the agreements like the ASEAN agreements on transboundary haze pollution. So of course it will enforce more on the willingness of the states to enact the law and build a more sustainable environment and to combat the climate change issue or the environmental degradation issues. That's one of the examples that we can say from the ASEAN countries. One last question there.
Yeah, from your paper, I think I understood that the ASEAN Declaration was initially intended to be a binding instrument, and then after the first meeting, the forum decided to make it a soft law instrument. And why was that decision made?
Okay, yeah, I also read that from the report. Formally, they want to make it as a binding instrument. So it's, I think, talking about the process of making an agreement between states is, as we know, it's more like political. So probably there's not all the states are agree with the decision to make it a binding instrument. So for the first initial step, some states are agreed to make it as a non-binding, and because of I think the NGO and some parties are talking about the need to make this instrument become more legally binding rather than just morally binding, because it's not easy to implement the agreement if it's a non-legally binding. So we are waiting for the willingness from states to make it more binding instrument.
Thank you very much. In view of the time, I would then like to thank you all, colleagues, students, and also with research in that area. And I found also interesting that all the panelists mentioned the global potential of the convention. So indeed, any state could accede to the convention. So that is a remarkable aspect of this regional instrument that could and still can become global. But what we see, the developments that we see, is that actually we have regional developments. We see this in Latin America, Caribbean with this kazoo, and then we see also developments in Asia, Southeast Asia, and that is something that put us in a very good prospect, I would say, because then we are having developments in the area, we are searching for that. There's the focus today was on climate change, but of course these procedural rights are applicable in the horizontal field of environmental law, encompassing then all environmental problems. So thank you for being here today, for putting this very